Okay.
Good deal.
Good evening, everybody. I'm James Williams. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. By the grace of God, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the guidance of a sponsor, the support of the fellowship. I was sobriety date of September 17th, 1988. For that, I will be forever grateful. Taking the suggestions that was given to me in my toolbox when I got here. When I wake up in the morning, I get on my knees and I ask God to please keep me sober today. The one who has all power. Also asking that my defects of character be humbly asking him to remove my shortcomings. Asking that my thoughts and my actions be divorced from selfish and self-centered, self-serving, egotistical, judgmental, lying, and fear. All the things that block me from God and from my fellow man. As a result of using these steps, I've found some peace in my life. The mental obsession has been removed between page 44 and 87. By the time I got to page 87, the mental obsession was removed from me. I'm 78 years old. I'm the second oldest of six. Born in Cleveland, Ohio. Raised by two wonderful parents. Um, my father was a heavy drinker. I can't call him an alcoholic, but I watched him suffer and die as a result of drinking, going through convulsions and seizures. For the first 15, 16 years of our life, things were good. My father was a hard-working man and a good provider. But then one day we looked up and he was gone. He just left. So at the time, that was my mother and myself and my sister and brothers. And well, back in 63, 62, 60, in the 60s, things were hard. So I stepped up to help my mother out, to take care of my sisters and brothers. And I didn't have no problem with it. But I had my discovered alcohol at an early age. I might have been about 10 or 11 years old, maybe 12. One Friday I was at home and usual was going on. My mother was cooking, her and my aunt and my uncle and my father was in the living room drinking. And they gave me a sip of Seagram's gin. Now Seagram's gin was distilled in 1939, and they still use that bottle today. And the contents of that bottle still does the same thing. Only difference, they added a few juices to it. But I fell in love with it, and I made sure that every Friday I would be home to get me a little sip up until about the age of 15. At the age of 15, I was allowed to wander out. I had a job working at a barber shop, and I was a runner. And one of the places that I was usually sent was to the bootlegger after hours. And the light bulb came on. Well, hey, I can come around here and get me a pint of gin, half a pint of gin, and nobody would never know it. Well, standing hanging out with my friends on the corner, they liked wine. I didn't care for wine because I didn't care the way they acted once they got drunk. I probably could have saved myself a whole lot of money, but hey, at the end I was there also. But we would meet up at night and stand on the corner talking and singing, and I would give them some change, get them some wine, and I would have me a half a pint of Seagram's gin in my pocket. And that's the way it went for a long time. Going to school, I was a pretty good student in junior high school up until graduation time of senior high. I got in some trouble with a teacher, and I went overboard with something that she had done, and I knew I was going overboard, but I was pissed off, and so I went too far, and I was suspended And so when my mother brought me back to school, and they were discussing what had happened in the classroom. Well, what had happened in the classroom, we had just came from gym, and I was sitting in the back of the class. My foot was itching, and I pulled off my shoe, and I had my foot on another seat across from me, and I was scratching my foot. This teacher came back, and she hit me on the foot. And when she hit me on my foot, it drawed blood, and I went off. Well, anyway, when my mother came back to the school, and they were discussing what had happened. I almost hit her, but some of my classmates kept me from hitting her. And they were discussing, about my behavior, and I said, well, what about my GD foot? And my mother backhanded me. So they had said, well, my punishment would be they would hold me back a half a semester. So that meant I couldn't graduate with my class. And I got a resentment right then and there. And I said after a week or so, I said, well, okay, I want to get a transfer. So I wanted to transfer to this occupational school. It was an all-boys school. But there they had trades. They had a weld shop, electrical shop, an auto mechanic shop, and well, had tinkered around with cars for ever since I was about 12 years old, and I knew a lot about cars. And so going in the auto mechanic shop, I learned a little bit more. And my specialty was still hot wiring cars. I learned how to do that well. And I was hanging out with some older guys, and well, I had a reputation of I knew how to hot wire a car. But things got kind of hot in '63, and I wanted to go into service. In '62, I took the test for the Navy. I took the test 3 times, but the 4th time I took it, I passed it, and me and some buddies of mine, was going in on the buddy plan. Anyway, that Friday when we went downtown for the swearing-in ceremony, they had so many people, so they told us to come back on Monday. That Saturday, I got sick, and that Sunday I was in the hospital. They put me in the hospital. So after about a week or two, I called down to the Navy Department and told them what happened. Well, they sent 2 doctors out to the hospital while I was still in the hospital, and they talked to me, and they found out I had what they call rheumatic fever. And the doctor told me, well, son, if you had made it in that Friday, you'd be a veteran right today without even leaving Cleveland. He said you won't have to worry about coming into the service because your classification would be 4F. And I said, what is that? He said, well, it's a medical deferment. Okay, now I'm sure enough. Oh well, what the hell. But anyway, I go back to my little trade, and in September of '63, we had an uncle that came and visited us, and he was living in Hartford, Connecticut. He was driving this beautiful '63 Grand Prix, Robin Egg Blue. I fell in love with that car. And I asked him, I said, where you work? He told me he worked for New Departure, which is a division of General Motors in Bristol, Connecticut. So, well, if I go back to Connecticut with you, you think you could get me a job? He said, well, ask your mother. Well, I asked my mother, and she was glad, because she was trying to figure out a way how to separate me and my brother. Me and my brother had some grandiose ideas. We were going to book numbers. Yep, we were going to be full-time gangsters. And we had talked to a couple of the number places, people where they, banked the numbers. And the guys just looked at us and shook their head and told us, just get out of here. Well, going back the second time and talking with them, and they put us out. And the third time, one of the guys, he knew some of my family members. So he told me and my brother, he says, look, I'm going to tell you both something right now. You're not going to write no numbers. You're not going to run no numbers. And I'm putting the word out, if anybody catch you with a number book, they're going to beat you behind. But I'm being nice about it the way he said it to me. So we thought I had one more person that we could talk to, and we went to talk to this guy. And we were telling him what we want to do, and he says, whose territory you think you're going to muscle in on? And he pulled out a pistol. He said, if I catch you, either one of you in my territory, I'm going to kill you. I looked at him, and I looked at my brother. I said, hell, I got a pistol. And he shook his head. He said, you know what? Y'all get out of here and go ahead on back to school. So by this time the word done got out. We couldn't get a number book to go and write numbers. And so when my mother found out about it, she wasn't happy about it, and she talked to us, and a couple of my uncles talked to us, and they let us know that, hey, this ain't gonna happen. You're gonna either wind up getting killed or wind up in jail. He said more than likely you're gonna wind up getting killed. So we gave that idea up, and we halfway convinced my mother that we were going to do something different. But when I went to Connecticut, when I told her I wanted to go to Connecticut, that was a wonderful idea. Well, 18 years old, I go to Connecticut, and I was on my own. I was there 3 days, and I got a job. And on this job, I met a lot of people. But the thing of it was, I met a lot of people that, and most of the folks I met wanted a drink, needed a drink, had a drink, or was going to get a drink. And I fit right in. Well, anyway, that and listening to the stuff in the barbershop, my street education, so I knew what to do. You get your woman that work in a restaurant, you get your woman that work in the bar. They've been there all this time, and you're going to just move. I don't know why I had never really thought about nobody else's property or woman or what have you. But anyway, I met a lady, and we became good friends, and I'm working, and I always have some couple of things that I wanted to do, because really hanging on the corner wasn't my stick. But I wanted to go to New York City because I had heard so much about Birdland. And back then, most of the jazz records, albums were recorded live in Birdland. So I told this lady what I wanted to do, and we went to Birdland and a few times. And I was always on the go, working and drinking. People talk about living for the weekend. My weekend started on Sunday and ended on the next Sunday. And this is how my drinking went. I got in trouble a couple of times. Back then in Connecticut, they called it a breach of peace. Today they call it domestic violence. But second time I got in trouble. I was on a year's probation with some stipulations. And the day that I left court, and I came home, and my uncle came by the house, and he told me to call my mother. He said she was sick. So I called her, and I found out she was sick. So I said, well, I'm going home to see about my mother. And one of the guys from the pool room stopped by my house. And he said, what you doing? I said, I got to go to Cleveland to see about my mother. He said, did you read those papers they gave you? I said, yeah. He said, did you hear what that judge said? I said, yeah. He said, you can't leave town without notifying your probation officer. Hell, the day Friday, that man gone. I'm going to see about my mother. So he went out, and he came back with a couple more guys, and we sat down, we had a drink, and we sat down, we talked. They convinced me, man, you got to wait till Monday, because if you leave town and something happened, you're going to be in a whole world of trouble and you're going to do that year in jail. So, okay, I made myself a promise right then and there. This would never happen to me again. I would never be under anybody that can tell me where I couldn't come and go. So I toughed it out, and that Monday I went to see my probation officer, and he told me, he said, well, I was in my office late. So, well, I didn't know, but anyway, he said, well, you can go home and let me know when you get back. So I came home and, stayed for a week with my mother and went back to Connecticut. And like I said, I was always on the go. My drinking really took off. I was always on the go, but I met a young lady one night in the club, and I fell in love. And yes, I fell in love. So after the club closed and me and my buddies, we were riding home, and I said, I'm going to marry that girl. So my buddy that knew me, he said, oh, here we go again, fellas. He said, but don't rent no tux until the day of the wedding. So you know him, every other month he said, get ready to get married. This young lady was special to me. And she told me when I met her, she said, I have 4 kids. I'm going through a divorce. And I really don't come out. She said it was my girlfriend's birthday, and they asked me to come out with her, celebrate. I said, well, we could be friends. And I pursued this lady, and we became good friends. And I 66, I guess 60, last was 66. I came back home to Cleveland, and I got a job working in a steel mill, and it was a good job and good pay. And okay, we got paid every 2 weeks. Well, my second payday for the month, we were on a long weekend. We finish up on Thursday morning and go back to work on Tuesday. So I used to go back and forth to Connecticut. Me and this young lady, we would keep company. When her divorce came through, she moved back to Savannah, Georgia. And when I got my vacation, like I said, I'm drinking good. And, I ain't got nobody but myself to take care of. I'm not responsible for nobody but myself. And I lived a happy-go-lucky life. Well, when I went to Savannah in '69, and 68, and I asked this young lady to marry me. I told her grandmother must have put a Mickey in that Echo Springs that she had up under the cabinet. But anyway, she said, well, what are we going to do about my kids? I said, well, we're going to take care of them. So we go back to Cleveland, get a place, and we send for them, put them in school, and hey, we got this. So we got married, and we came back to Cleveland, and we set out on a mission. Well, my drinking, I just set aside. I mean, I totally set it aside. And the guys that I work with, they used to ask me, hey, man, you ain't drinking? No, man, I'm going home. I got something to do. She got a job, and we set out with a mission. We found an apartment. We finished it off, and, well, the deal was she was supposed to go back and get the kids in September, but in July, she started missing her kids. So I said, well, okay, we're situated, we're set up. Now, here's where I had a big secret. I got married March 21st. I had a child born July 3rd. And this was something that I tried my best to keep hid for a long time. Instead of confessing up to it, and, I tried my best to keep it hid. But anyway, when she found out, she wasn't too happy about it. And she talked to some people, and I convinced her, well, I can take care of my child, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I did it. And we went on, and hey, I worked hard, played hard, This was my best friend. We used to party on the weekends, and most of the time, at the, early in our marriage, was that we had on the weekends we had friends over to the house, and we would go to their house, and the kids would be in a room, and we would drink and party. But anyway, that got kind of old, and I started hanging out in the streets. So hanging out in the streets, you start meeting people, and now it got to the place where I didn't realize it, that the streets were making demands on me, my job was making demands on me, and my family was making demands on me. So now I'm trying to wear three hats. Plus, I'm halfway active in the church. Well, I can't say halfway because I could make it to church and I could do things in the church, and I was, involved in my kids' education. Matter of fact, I was wound up being president of PTA for a couple of years. And but I'm always, working and always got to go on the go. But anyway, my drinking, it escalated and escalated. In 1984, I hit the jackpot. I beat it on a job. It was a good paying job. So what do an alcoholic do? Once he get a good job, he's making good money, also more drinking. And it was still the same situation where I was, getting paid every 2 weeks and making more money. And anyway, with this one Friday, this was in 1985. One Thursday morning, I was getting off and I was coming out of the locker room, and General Foreman, he was coming out of his office, and he said, "Hey, buddy, how you doing this morning?" I said, "Good." He said, "You're giving that apprentice hell." He said, "For the last month," he said, "you even with your repair crew, you about to break some records. So them guys taught you well." Yes, they did. They taught me well. The guys that broke me in on this job, they taught me everything that I needed to know. Even with, I'd never drank on the job, but I had some hangovers. And these guys that I was working with, they told me when I started working in that area, this is going to be your next move, so you got to know everything. There was a job where there was no room for mistakes. And I mean, when I say no mistakes, there was no room for mistakes, period. Because water and molten metal, electricity and oxygen, there was no room for mistakes. And I learned this job well. But anyway, this morning, particular guy, me and him was talking, and he said, "Well, what you going to do this weekend?" I said, "Well, I'm going to be jumping up and down. I'm going to drink some whiskey and have some fun." He said, "You better watch that drinking, buddy. You'll wind up in trouble." I'll be damned, that night I wasn't in jail for drunk driving. Talking about an ominous warning. Now, all right, I get locked up. Really, I wasn't driving. I was sitting at the light. But anyway, that's what they got me for, operating under the influence. So I spent the night in jail. Now I'm in jail. I called home a few times for my wife to come get me out of jail. She come downtown that morning and she parks in front of the Justice Center, and she goes in trying to figure out how to get me out of jail. She comes out and they're getting ready to tow her car. She get in the car and wouldn't get out, so they wind up arresting her. And now both of us in jail. Okay, I get out, go to court, and they told me, get you a lawyer and come back. I call home, and my brother-in-law tells me she's in jail. So he's on the way downtown, so he comes downtown and meet me. So we're running around his Justice Center. So we finally got some information, and they told us what courtroom she was in. So by the time we got around to the courtroom, she was coming out, and she was madder than a wet hen in a rainstorm. I mean, she was pissed. "We got 2 damn cars in impound. I'm in jail and you in jail." Yeah, okay, so we took care of that, and after we get the cars out of the impound, she went home, and I went to the liquor store, got a half a gallon of Serenity gin, Sit right in front of the liquor store. Now the Justice Center is right across the street. I just got out of jail. Poured me a drink, made a U-turn, came home, had a couple more drinks, and went to bed. She was mad because she had missed work. And finally, I wake up. Now I got to figure out what I'm gonna do about this. Well, I talked to a couple of drunks, and they give me a lawyer. So we go to see the lawyer that Saturday morning. You know, it's a funny thing about lawyers, the most dishonest people in the world. Okay, we go in and I tell him my story, and you know they arrested me because I'm driving a nice car and blah 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 blah. He said, "Well, okay, this is what we're gonna do. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get you a driving privilege because you work a swing shift. Then when you get to go to court, we're going to, you know, I'll handle this. Just stay out of the suburbs." So my wife is sitting there. She said, "Well, how much is it going to cost us?" So she pulls out the checkbook. Now he's sitting there. Now, like I say, lawyers know damn fools when they see them. And he got two of them sitting in front of him. Here's a drunk, and his wife is ready to bail him out at all costs. You know, so you know he got a good customer. So I went, you know, finally went to court, and I got a year's suspension and a light fine. I might have paid about $1,000. I tell you what it cost a day to get caught drunk driving. Every time I look at my son and go in the garage and look at the motorcycle that he's riding now, from what he had from a DWI accident and what it cost him, I just shake my head, but for the grace of God. But anyway, I'm coming up to my last drunk, September 17th. My wife got up that morning. I was on long weekend again. My wife got up. She was going on a bus tour to the Amish country. And she says to me, "Today is your mother's birthday. Can you please not drink today? Don't get drunk." Well, she knew I was going to drink. Yeah, okay. She said, "You got any money?" "No, I ain't got no money." So she gave me some money. And she left, and I went round to my buddy's house. And this guy, he was going through DTs and the shakes, and he said, "Hey, how about going to get us something to drink and get us some breakfast?" So I did. You know, he said, "Look in the drawer." Looked in the drawer. He had some money in the drawer. Now, all I had to do was ask him for any amount, but I stole $50 from this guy, my best friend. The guy that would gave me his shirt off of his back. And I went on and got the food and we drank. And all that day I was drinking. Couldn't get drunk and couldn't get sober. That night we goes to the birthday party and coming home. I wanted to stop somewhere. My wife didn't. And we got in a fight. And that was all I remembered until that morning. I tell you, I heard about people doing things in blackouts and doing stuff. Never thought it would have happened to me, but it did. I mean, it was hell to tell the captain what happened that night. I wound up in the hospital. And one of them laying in the hospital, the doctor come in with his fellows, and we talked. He said, "Well, what happened?" I said, "I don't want to talk about it." And he says, "Okay, good." So he stepped back behind the curtain, he pulled the curtain, and he says to his fellows, "All these damn drunks got the same story." He asked the nurse, "Do we have insurance?" She said, "Yeah." He said, "Give him another IV and get him the hell out of here. Somebody might need that bed. More worthy than a damn drunk." And I'm laying there listening. What? This is a doctor talking about me like this? Well, hey, we don't give doctors a fair break no way, so how else would they think about drunks? But anyway, while I'm laying there, a priest came in to see me, and this was the priest that had blessed our marriage, and I didn't even recognize him. And we talked, and he asked me, "Do you think your wife will forgive you?" I ain't give a damn one way or another, but I wouldn't say it. And he asked me that I want to take communion. I took communion. I have been taking communion for almost 20 years. And that morning I took communion, I believe started my journey. The old communion, Lord, I'm not worthy to receive you, but only to say the words of my soul shall be healed, asking for forgiveness. Well, I got out the hospital and I stayed with a family member for a few days, and you know, your family, they're willing to overlook what you do, and all they looking at is what happened to you. Well, I knew I was wrong, but anyway, I came home and my wife, she talked to me about getting some help for alcohol and drug dependency. Hell, I ain't no drug addict. I work every day. You know, how can I be, you know, she said alcohol and drug addiction. I didn't hear nothing about the alcohol, but anyway, she made a phone call and the lady says, let him make his own phone call. She said, well, he's sitting right here. She said, ma'am, let him dial the phone. So she hung up and she said, call this number and talk to this lady. So I called back. I said to the lady, I want to get some help for me and my wife. She said, that sounds like a good idea. We're going to make an appointment for you, and you come over and we'll talk with you, and then maybe we can get her. So when I went in to see this counselor, this guy I met who became a good friend, we went in his office and he just said, how you doing? What's going on? And I told him what had happened. I told this man the honest to God truth. He looked at me and he shook his head. He said, man, you're alcoholic. You need some help. Well, the book tells us we don't like to pronounce anyone, you know, alcoholic. I took his word for it. I went through an outpatient program, and some of my peers, they did their best to convince me. They showed me in the book. Yeah. But I took his word for it. And I told him, I said, well, I'll do this for 6 months. And he asked me what was the 6 months about. I said, well, I'm going to save up some money. I can give her the house and the car, and I'm going on about my business. He gave me a suggestion. Why don't you do something about your drinking before you make any major decisions about your life? Do it for a year. After that, if you want to get a divorce, we'll help you. That sounds like a good idea. Okay. So I jumped into the program. I got a sponsor, and started going to meetings. And like I say, the first suggestion I heard at the first meeting I went to, when the secretary said, if you want to stay sober, you get on your knees in the morning and ask God to keep you sober. My sponsor told me the same thing, and he says, talk to God before you talk to anybody in the morning. He said, I mean anybody. And he proved that to me. One morning after about 3 weeks, I woke up with the idea I'm going to get drunk today. And I told my wife, and she says, why? I told her, I don't know. So I called my sponsor, and we talked. He said, look, did you pray this morning? I said, yeah. He said, well, do this. Hang up, get on your knees and pray and call me back. So I did. And he, you know, told me, look, go ahead on and take care of your business. And when you get off work, go to a meeting. You'll be okay. Well, I went to work that day, and I caught hell all day long. As noisy as that place was that I was working in, all I could think, I'm going to drink, I don't want to drink, I'm going to drink, I don't want to drink. I prayed the Serenity prayer. Finally, I couldn't take it no more. I asked one of my helpers, I said, watch the furnace, I got to go in the bathroom. I went in the bathroom, I got on my knees, and I prayed, and I prayed. And I came back out, and he said, you okay? I said, yeah. I got off that evening, I went to a meeting and talked to an old timer, and I told the old timer what was going on. And he said to me, he says, you know right from wrong. All you need to do is, you know, learn how not to drink. He said, have you hit your bottom? I didn't know what he meant. No, I ain't hit no bottom. He said, are you bankrupt? No, I ain't bankrupt. I got a good paying job. I got a house. I got 2 cars. I got money in my pocket. He just shook his head and he explained to me. He said, do you think God had anything to do with your successes? God? I said, yeah. Okay. So he got my attention. He said, you know right from wrong. He said, if you didn't know right from wrong, why do you have to lie about everything that you do and hide everywhere that you go? Okay, you got me. Go back to my sponsor. We get busy. Start doing the steps. Went through the first 3 steps. And that Saturday morning, this was about a month into the program. We were setting up the meeting, and he said, get your big book out. We get the big book out, and we read a few pages, and he had me to read how it works. Now, how it works is pretty long, all the way up to where it says we are now at step 3. First, we must be convinced that a life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. Can you identify with any of that? Yep. Read it again. Okay, so I read it again. So while I'm reading, the priest comes downstairs where we were having the meeting, and he explained to him what we were about to do the 3rd step prayer. He said, let's read it again. I'm looking, wait a minute, which one of these guys I'm going to cuss out first, him or the priest? 3 times? You want me to read this? Okay, so I read it again. Then they both chimed in, well, can you identify with anything? Yep. What can you identify with? Okay, I get through. So, well, read it one more time. I tell you, if I'd had my pistol in my pocket, I would have probably shot both of them. But I read it again. They said, slow down, slow down. We got plenty of time. I read it again. And we go through the same thing. Then we done the 3rd step prayer. Started on my 4th step, 5th step. I was sober for 2.5 years, and on our 22nd wedding anniversary, my wife was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. Damn, I'm in AA, and this is what's going to happen to me? Hey, it happens to people that ain't in AA. This is one of those big chunks that life hands you. This is what the book talks about. When life hands you those big chunks. And the thing of it is, people that never drink at all get those same big chunks. I talked to some people. We prayed about it. And one guy, old timer, said, people say it's going to be okay. We can't tell you it's going to be okay. You got to learn to be okay with it. And he explained it to me. And he said, what does step 1? He used to tease me all the time. What does step 1 say? I said, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. He laughed. He said, yeah, because I'm glad you caught on, because you used to say I'm powerless over alcohol and my wife is unmanageable. I said, oh, that's why everybody used to laugh at me all the time. He said, yeah. Then we talked about where the alcoholic is driven by 100 forms of fears and delusions. I used to say 1,000. And my sponsor used to laugh and say, yep, you done found 900 more. It would take you to do it. But, I started doing things. I started feeling getting better. I started, building a relationship with God, with my wife and my family, and things were going great. For 5 years, December 1993, I went to visit my firstborn child. We had always had a relationship. I went over to carry her some Christmas presents for her and my grandson because he was going out of town for Christmas. We had a beautiful day together. I tell you, it was the most beautiful time I had in a long, Got ready to leave. She walked me downstairs and she said, Daddy, I love you. I said, I love you too, baby. I said, I'll see you in a day or so, She says, okay. December 22nd, her mother calls me, told me she was murdered. Dead. Her and her boyfriend. What? This is Christmas. This is AA. Got on my knees and I prayed. And I prayed and I prayed. And I said something that I never thought I would say, but I know where it came from. I asked God to have mercy on the souls of the people that took her life. How can you say this? I pray the Lord's Prayer asking for forgiveness. I pray the Serenity prayer. I pray all these other prayers. So now how can I not ask for something for someone that I asked for myself? It wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard. Here, me and her mother's one side of the family planning for Christmas, the other side of the family we're making plans for a funeral. But that's life. That's one of those big chunks. And between dealing with the MS and dealing with the death, but I never thought about a drink. All I thought about was, hey, staying sober, praying, going to meetings, helping other people. I had a few sponsorees, and they used to look at me, and ask me questions, and we stick to the book. The year 2008, I went to Lucasville to visit the guy that took her life. Yep, the man that took her life. I prayed with him. And I let him know I forgive him. I don't know. The system say he got to pay for his crimes because he killed 2 people. He's doing double life and never get out. Locked up 24 hours a day, 23 hours a day. And I prayed with this man, and I told him about my life. And he asked me a question. He said, "You didn't get drunk?" I said, "No. No, God protected me." And he broke down crying. And he kept asking me, "How can you come here and forgive me?" I said, "Son, it ain't me, it's God working through me. I don't know how he's going to work in your life. But you know what I learned? You think you're doing this program? Let something happen. When the rubber meet the road, if you've ever been on an airplane and when the airplane touched down, when that wheel hit the ground, and if you ever see that smoke coming from it, this is the acid test that the daily reflection talks about. Can we meet all adversities and troubles without taking a drink? It's been a hell of a journey. My wife right now, she has COPD. We've been dealing with MS for 33 years. She's totally independent. For the last 31 years, I've been able to take care of her. I have some health issues, and I had to throw in the towel, and my kids were there for me. And I know that I could have did it in a better way, but I just told them, y'all do it, the hell with it, I can't do no more. They readily stepped up, and I thought about it, this ain't right, this their mother too. And I called them all back together and I apologized, like I told them, I need help. We can be so great and be so good at fixing things, and we solving other people's problems, that we forget that, hey, we're human too. These girls tell me all the time, "Daddy, we are where we are today because you gave us a chance to live." We got to step up. And also now my wife made a decision Sunday that she needs to be in a facility to take care of her. She made the decision on her own. I've been trying for the last couple of months. I've been trying to figure out how to tell her this, but she made the decision, and she told her doctor, and told one of my daughters who was there at the hospital, and she told the rest of them. God works in ways that we don't. It's not mysterious ways. We just don't understand His ways and how He works. I'm going to go back to page 13 right quick at the bottom, where it says, "My newfound friends promised me that if I done certain things, I would end up on a way of living, which will solve all of my problems, using spiritual principles." I want to thank you for asking me to share. And I want to thank you guys for being here, and for the old timers that kept the doors open until we got here. And thank you very much. Have a great night, everyone. Can we end with the Lord's Prayer? Do we end with the Lord's Prayer?
James, we'll finish with something, and I'll come back to you and let you close with the Lord's Prayer, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.